the horrors of colonialism, painting the European. The African education system is crafted to erase the horrors of colonialism, painting the European invaders as benevolent heroes who rescued the black race from savagery. This manipulation of history is meant to suppress the truth, glorifying oppressors while hiding their atrocities. Despite this, the resilience of the African spirit endures. A new generation of Africans awakened and determined is passing on the true history, ensuring that the painful legacy of colonialism is neither forgotten nor repeated. France remains a notorious figure inflicting suffering on its former African colonies. Trapped in a relentless cycle of pain and dependency that France, Britain, and the United States refuse to end, African nations have begun to revolt against the enduring chains of neo-colonialism. The struggle for genuine independence and self-determination is more crucial than ever. This is the story of what Africans had to endure at the hands of Western Europeans right after gaining independence. A tale of enduring pain and endless struggle.
Let's say I'm working on a research paper about the future of renewable energy, and I come across a study with findings I want to include.
In late 1972 in West Africa, Benin declared itself a Marxist state. President Mathieu Kérékou nationalized the country's oil. The French government was outraged, asserting that there could not be a communist African state and that Benin's natural resources belonged to France. In response, the French organized a coup d'etat to remove the African president. Bob Denard, a mercenary, was chosen for the operation under the supervision of the French ambassador Maurice Delaunay. Western coups d'etats aimed at toppling African governments are often executed through their ambassadors and heads of NGOs. Bob Denard was experienced in destabilizing Africa. He fought in the Congo in the early 1960s to secure the Katanga mines for Western European control. Bob was the right man to call on to get rid of the Benin president. In 1977, the mercenary assembled a team of 100 men trained in Gabon to storm the presidential palace. The Soviet Union, a true friend of Africans, tipped off the Benin president about the imminent French coup. Bob's team was outnumbered and outsmarted by the Benin army. The mercenary fled to Gabon, embarrassed by his failure. The French government later arrested Bob Denard for his failed coup in the West African nation. In 1965, Jean Bedel Bokassa seized power in the Central African Republic. The country was a key colonial territory of France, with large military bases used to police neighboring African countries. Strategically located in the middle of Africa, Central African Republic made it easy to deploy European troops to topple any African government deemed a threat to European interests on the continent. The French president Valéry Giscard d'Estaing was a close friend of Bokassa, and he would travel to meet him personally to ensure that the country's natural resources were secured for the Europeans. In 1977, the same year the French government tried to get rid of the Benin president, Bokassa declared himself an emperor with absolute power. The coronation was subsidized by France and cost over $13 million, which, adjusted for inflation, would be $65.3 million today. No heads of state attended the ceremony. They were represented by ambassadors, but France's Minister of Cooperation was present. Many African countries were outraged by French politics on the continent. The vast majority of Africans did not recognize Bokassa's empire. Valéry Giscard realized his mistake and decided to replace Bokassa. He withdrew his support for the new emperor, prompting Bokassa to turn to Muammar Gaddafi of Libya for support. The French president chose one of his loyal, trained, and educated African supporters living in France to be the new president of the Central African Republic. His name was David Dacko. David Dacko was dispatched from Paris on September 1979 to the Central African Republic, accompanied by French Secret Service officers. When Emperor Bokassa was on an official visit to Libya to meet with Muammar Gaddafi for support, the French initiated Operation Barracuda. David Dacko was driven by the French Secret Service to the presidential palace, and the coup was announced. The Central African Empire is no more. French television announced the coup the same hour it happened.
Mesdames, Messieurs, bonsoir. Il n'y a plus d'empire centrafricain, il n'y a plus d'empereur, il n'y a plus de Bokassa Ier. Le dictateur de Bangui a été limogé cette nuit. C'est en Libye qu'il a appris sa déchéance.
Here is another truth about African countries you need to know. Armed Europeans can walk in and out of African heads of state palaces without being stopped. African heads of state are powerless against European powers. It is still a relationship of master and slave. Nothing has changed since decolonization. When François Mitterrand came to power in France, he changed the old brutal France-Afrique tactics of controlling African countries. G. Penn, Mitterrand's new chief advisor, developed a theory based on African love for mysticism and the supernatural. The idea was to include African heads of state in secret cults to pledge allegiance and loyalty to Europeans. By the 1980s, all heads of state in former French colonies were officially made members of these cults. The Brotherhood did not consider themselves Africans anymore. The African puppet leaders committed all sorts of atrocities against their own citizens because their allegiance lay with the Europeans. The fall of the Soviet Union in 1991 was a disaster for African countries. The Soviets were the only allies the Africans relied on to fight off Western imperialism on the continent. It is important to note that the Soviets provided all the guns and ammunition to African countries to fight for their independence, a grudge Western powers still carry against the Russian Republic today. In 1994, the French company ELF was finally exposed by a whistleblower. Every major act of corruption and covert operations implicating high-level government officials funded by the company were exposed to the public. The world was horrified by the actions of France and other European powers on the African continent. Africans across the continent asked the Europeans to stop funding and choosing leaders that served their interests. The Soviet Union is no more, and there is no justification for Western powers to still occupy the continent under the pretext of combating communism. Hope finally emerged in Africa as France's monopoly over the energy market in its former colonies began to crumble. China offered an alternative to Africa, a win-win cooperation based on mutual respect. France and other Western powers would finally leave the African continent, and Africa would finally flourish and develop.
Does your business need to send rewards and gift cards in bulk? Try Tremendous. Tremendous.
A series of conferences and summits in French-speaking African countries were organized by pro-democratic groups to challenge all Western puppet presidents and possibly remove them from power. In Gabon, Omar Bongo, the man who had held power for over 30 years, was enraged at his Western masters for leaving him at the mercy of the democratic revolutionary groups who wanted him out of power.
Venez marcher avec nous pour qu'ensemble nous luttions, pour qu'ensemble nous renversions le despote.
In May 1990, the leader of the opposition in Gabon, Joseph Renjambe, was assassinated by Bongo's men in a hotel room. Suspecting that ELF had a hand in the assassination, the Gabonese people stormed the French company headquarters in Port-Gentil. Many employees, accused of being French collaborators and traitors to the African people, were stripped naked and paraded all over town as symbols of black traitors and European lovers. ELF reacted by shutting down the oil field in Gabon and asking President Omar Bongo to stop the riots or face a coup d'etat. Bongo appeared on national television, assuring the French that he would eliminate his own people without hesitation to show his loyalty to the French government.
Ce n'est pas parce qu'il y a des manifestations de rue que cela doit mener la fin des règnes. Moi, je ne me laisserai pas faire. Nous sommes décidés à mettre de l'ordre, quel qu'en soit le prix. C'est tout.
Bongo also threatened France to hand over the African oil to the United States, as if Gabon's wealth belonged to him. France sent the Foreign Legion to fight the African freedom fighters. Port Gentil was encircled, and the rebellion was crushed. The Africans who blockaded the European quarters were eliminated in cold blood. The French army regained control of Gabon, and Omar Bongo regained control of the country. The same tactics were recently used in New Caledonia to regain control of the island nation. The Kanaks who called for independence were shot, and their leader, Christian Tine, was taken to France and imprisoned. In Congo-Brazzaville, in Central Africa, President Sassou Nguesso was also hit by riots. The citizens were determined to oust their puppet leader and take control of the oil fields. The president had no chance of winning the upcoming elections, so the French government came up with a solution to keep him in office by sharing power with the former Prime Minister Pascal Lissouba, who came from a majority ethnic group in the country. After winning the election, Lissouba betrayed the French government that funded his campaign through ELF. He refused to share power with Nguesso. Fearing retaliation from the French government, the new president Lissouba signed agreements with the American company Oxy to have a U.S. military base in the country for protection in exchange for 10 years of oil production. The American company paid Lissouba $150 million to help him pay the military, who hadn't been paid for months. ELF armed former President Nguesso's loyalists to fight Lissouba. A civil war broke out from 1993 until 1997. The president of Angola, José dos Santos, backed by the French company ELF, provided support to Denis Sassou Nguesso. Angola, also an oil-producing nation with massive reserves, saw dos Santos, who had just won a civil war in Angola, send troops to Congo-Brazzaville at France's request to rescue Sassou Nguesso. France's chosen puppet was reinstated. The villains regained their foothold in the African country. The world watched powerlessly, and the United Nations is complicit in all France's crimes in Africa. African lives mean nothing to them. The continent is, after all, the playground of Western powers. In the year 2000, more whistleblowers exposed transactions from Switzerland made by the French company ELF to African heads of state for the complete control of their respective countries. 3 magistrates pushed for justice, and finally, ELF was brought to justice. The company was liquidated and absorbed by smaller companies. ELF became ELF Total Energies. But this was not the end of France in Africa. France is not done tormenting black people. The chains of colonialism may have been broken, but the shackles of neo-imperialism still bind.
To really give Africa what it deserves. They're always there to gain from Africa, take out resources from Africa, and
George Friedman, the geopolitical
within the global space. So here is Shahid Bolsen talking about how Western relationship with Africa has been that of treachery and deceit. Let's watch this, then come back and talk about it more.
You know, there was a book, George Friedman, the geopolitical analyst. He wrote a book in the early 2000s called The Next 100 Years, where he tried to sort of forecast what the world might look like in the year 2100. He began by talking about what the world looked like in the year 1900. And then he goes sort of decade by decade, how radically everything changed between, say, 1900 and 1930, or 1930 to 1950, and so on. And it's truly astonishing how many drastic paradigm shifts took place. Empires fell, empires rose, world wars, on and on. Really breathtaking global shifts. When you look at history that way, it's hard to wrap your head around how many changes can actually take place in a relatively short amount of time. Basically, within one person's lifetime, everything can change. You know, in 1900, like he says in his book, London was the center of the world. There was no communism, no Soviet Union. There was the Ottoman Empire, the Austro-Hungarian Empire, and so on, the Americans mostly stayed on their side of the Atlantic. And it seemed like this is how things would just be, indefinitely. But just a short 40 years or so later, everything changed. England was demolished in the World War. The Ottomans were gone. The Soviets emerged. Germany took over France, on and on. Really radical, unthinkable changes. Then if you go ahead a few more decades to the 1980s, again, it seems like a completely different world. And then on forward to the 2000s, it's remarkable. Everything changed. And when you think about that, when you think about how many huge paradigmatic pendulum swings there have been that have taken place and that do take place in just a matter of decades, it makes certain continuities even more astonishing. When you're able to maintain a constant amidst the radical changes that sweep over every other element of international relations, global power relationships, international relations, and so on, when you're able to actually keep something unchanged, it lets you know just how important, how paramount it is that this particular status quo remains intact, how important it is to those who are keeping it intact. And I'm talking now about the West's relationship with Africa, because the West's economic relationship with Africa has not fundamentally changed in over 800 years. This is absolutely stunning. If the drastic and rapid changes that can occur and have occurred within the West over just 1 or 2 decades, if that's breathtaking, well, what about the fact that nothing has changed between the West and Africa in basically a millennium? I mean, the relationship was ruthlessly extractive 800 years ago, and it's ruthlessly extractive now. And you can't help but recognize that keeping things this way simply must not only be important to the West, but literally it must be the most important thing to the West. It's so important to them that they have always maintained this status quo no matter what else changes in the world. Wallahi, they're dedicated to the subjugation and the exploitation of Africa more than they're dedicated to anything else. Everything else is allowed to change except for this. This must never change. And it's not difficult to see why. I mean, it's the subjugation and the exploitation of Africa that has enabled the West to impersonate a superior civilization. It's like a con man, a drifter who tries to convince people that he's some sort of an aristocrat or a monarch or something. Well, he needs to have some kind of a display of a monarch's wealth in order to be convincing. And that's been the whole basis for what the West claims about itself being superior. The whole basis has always been that they're materially successful. So, okay, today you have iPhones and technology, you have a high standard of living and so forth. So that means that you must be better. You must be more intelligent. You must be more evolved. You must be more civilized, more advanced than the rest of us. I mean, look how nice their places are. See how much better their stuff is. Well, this is all reliant upon the vicious pillage and plunder of Africa. Without this subjugation, without this exploitation of Africa, Europe and the West would be nothing but crude, emaciated serfs, barely producing enough to survive. Their wealth was primarily derived from theft and plunder, from piracy and slavery, from mass murder and crime. This is just the historical reality. Because of the subjugation of Africa, first through chattel slavery, the extraction of Africa's human resources, and now through the extraction of natural resources, the West has been able to maintain this artificial, unearned status as a so-called civilization, keeping Africa subject, subordinate, suppressed, and impoverished is an existential need for the West. It's the only way that they can keep up the pretense of their supremacy. Because again, the pretense of their supremacy has never been based upon any actual advancement, any actual sophistication, any actual moral or intellectual development. It has always been based on the violent accumulation of wealth and resources, upon brute power, deceit, and conniving. And Africa, the subjugation of Africa, is the most vital necessity for keeping this con going. I mean, right now, the trade relationship between the West and Africa is that something like 70% of exports to Africa from the West are manufactured goods, and imports from Africa are just the raw materials used to make those manufactured goods. So they're taking from Africa what is needed in order to produce goods that then Africa buys from the West, made with their own raw materials. And the West has done everything possible to try to impede Africa's ability to build its own manufacturing base so that they could potentially use their own raw materials, use their own raw minerals to produce their own goods. I mean, the whole process should be done in-house. It should all be done in Africa. That's what makes sense. You know, you have the materials, you have the minerals, you can make the products. That's how it should be. Rather than giving your raw natural resources to the West, for them to manufacture and refine and process and so on, Africa could do all of those things themselves. I mean, imagine the impact that would have. Where would that leave the West then? Well, they know that. The West knows that. They're acutely aware of their actual total dependence upon Africa. If Africa manufactured, if they used their own resources, their own minerals, their own materials for their own industries, well, the entire economy of the West would collapse. And with the collapse of their economy, their whole so-called civilization would collapse. Africa is the foundation upon which they built their house. So they know this. And like I said, this is why no matter what else changes in the world, no matter how power dynamics shift in the world, the subjugation of Africa has been maintained for over 800 years. There's literally nothing more important to them than this. And this is why there are very powerful factions in the West that want to destroy BRICS, and why they fearmonger about Chinese investment in Africa, and why America specifically is engaged in nonstop interference, covert operations, regime change, regime infiltration projects all across the continent. I mean, look at South Africa, the ANC, either out of naivete or corruption, or naivete that devolved into corruption, or out of coercion, or some combination of all of these factors, the ANC collaborated with neoliberal programs for 30 years. I mean, to one degree or another, for the last 30 years. But as global power dynamics have been shifting, and the creation and the ascendancy of BRICS has been taking place, people have started to have aspirations. And more importantly, they've started to have options. And those options have made their aspirations actually achievable. I'm talking about aspirations of political independence. Africa. These aren't measures that we don't know whether they're useful and beneficial or not. Obviously they are, and tremendously so. And that's precisely why these types of policies, these types of measures have to be subverted. I mean, it's absolutely ludicrous for anyone in South Africa today to advocate neoliberal policies when we have in front of our eyes the catastrophic failure of those policies. I mean, nearly half the population is unemployed, over half the population among the youth. 75% of South Africans earn just the equivalent of $350 a month or less. In fact, roughly half of the population earn only $75 a month. And you're still going to advocate for the policies that got you here? No, obviously, if you nationalize, it's better for you. Obviously. I mean, empower the government with those abundant resources instead of letting foreign companies seize those profits and transfer them out of the country. I mean, if those revenues are going to the state, then the government will have the resources they need to better address the needs of the society. They can invest in SMEs, they can provide education, skills training, and so on, fund R&D. I mean, it's a no-brainer, but you're scared of what the West will do.
Hi, we're Visible. Get set to travel this summer with a wireless plan that'll keep you connected on the go.
They tell you that if you nationalize, then there will be massive capital flight, investors will run away, and so on. Well, think about that for a second. They're trying to scare you with consequences that they themselves will be imposing. They're warning you that if you do something that is in your country's best interest, they will punish you. This is very different from telling you that the policy in and of itself is actually bad. They're telling you that they will make it a bad policy because of what they will do to you if you implement it. You understand? These people are threatening you, and then you're supposed to trust their advice? The advice of these neoliberal predators? You're supposed to listen to them and trust their advice when they are blatantly telling you that they will punish you if you do something to try to make things better, to try to change things? I mean, they couldn't make it more obvious, their malice. They couldn't make their malice more obvious. They couldn't make it any more obvious how against your best interests they are, how much they put their own private interests above the interests of their country. They're openly identifying themselves to you as your enemy. You understand me? I mean, they're not saying that nationalization doesn't work. They're not saying that it isn't beneficial. They're saying that they will do everything in their power to make sure it doesn't work. They're saying that they will sabotage nationalization for their own sake, for the sake of their own profit interests. And still you let this type of people have a say in policy discourse? Well, that's humiliating. They hold you in contempt and they don't even hide it. I'm telling you, everyone knows what should be done in a country like South Africa, what kind of economic policies they should implement. And it's the same thing that many global South countries should do. Everyone knows the obvious economic benefits of these types of policies. And everyone knows that the only reason that you don't implement these policies is because parasitic, predatory, Western colonizing private sector powers will try to punish you if you do. I mean, for instance, the nationalization of key sectors in South Africa or in any other country, such as mining, such as energy and finance. This is essential to try to break the stranglehold of foreign capital on your country and to ensure that the country's resources are actually used for the benefit of the people and for the benefit of the domestic economy. Land reform, the question of land reform in South Africa is critical. This is a critical issue. There should be a comprehensive land reform program in South Africa that...
But everyone has a different story to tell. Shell, which says it's losing it. But everyone has a different story to tell. Shell, which says it's losing it.
The Tampa market. Starting rise.
In Northeast Africa, precisely on the horn of Africa.
All right, good afternoon, folks. Once again, this is Frank. I am your host. This is the Revolutionary Repatriation Educational Lecture Series aspect of WCC every Sunday at 1 p.m. Once again, unfortunately, our Twitter account, for some reason, we're still working on it. So it's not really functioning. So all those that do watch from the Twitter account, we urge you to come to the YouTube or the Facebook currently. All right, so today's topic, it says, has NATO or Ukraine taken the war to Africa? Has NATO or Ukraine taken the war to Africa? On African people, against African people? Has the West taken the war to Africa against African people? And the last one we're going to look at, it says perspective reasoning. Now, there's a reason why you see it says perspective reasoning, because we do not have concrete evidence. So this is, I don't want to say opinion, but it is a reasoning that is based on the current trend going on. All right, the current trend going on, where ECOWAS said they are using all kind of means. They are going to strategize, right? They are going to use any means necessary. Any means necessary. Okay? Again, the Sahel region or the AES. All right? So as they are using any means necessary, make sure also that the colonialists, if the neo-colonialists, which is ECOWAS and AU, they are the neo-colonialists. And the leaders in ECOWAS and AU, who are also the neo-colonialists, are leaders like Tinubu. And in fact, we're going to expose Tinubu again later on. All right, the reason why Tinubu is Tinubu. All right, so the neo-colonialists are people like Tinubu, someone like Nana Akufo-Addo, someone like Alassane of Cote d'Ivoire, someone like the Benin. Those people, they are the neo-colonialists working or who are presiding over the neo-colonial institutions like ECOWAS and AU. Now, equally so, the colonialists, the US or EU, all right, those are the colonialists, all right, nation that enslaved African and nation that colonized African, period. Simple definition. Those are the colonialists, all right. Now, those people as well are also using any means necessary. Now, their only means that they are using or they will use is to actually pressurize the neo-colonialists. So this thing is very interesting, folks. The means of the colonizer, the means of the colonialist, right, is to pressurize. The neo-colonialist is to pressurize Tinubu, all right, is to pressurize Nana Akufo-Addo, is to pressurize Alassane, those people, right, is to pressurize them. Now, as they are being pressurized, okay, we're going to get into it, but let me not waste my time, but at least you understand where we're going, right? So that's why I said perspective reasoning. So what we are going to explain when it comes to that is based on reasoning of what is happening and what been happening and approaches that they have been undertaking that they have not worked. Because one of the approach that they took first was to what? Wage war on Niger. That was the first approach, all right? Was to wage war on Niger. Now, after that did not work, what did they do? Now, and in waging war on Niger, who was supporting? ECOWAS, US, EU, supported ECOWAS to get ammunition, right? Those are the first approach. Now, the second approach, after the first approach did not work, and it did not work because the AES nation like Burkina Faso, Mali, right, or Niger, okay, Allah, and they said, no, we cannot allow Niger to fight by itself because the fight of Niger is our fight because it's the same thing and it's the same people. So we have to group ourselves and wait for ECOWAS to come. So then ECOWAS saw the unity. And you see, there's a power in unity. There's a victory in unity. So at that moment, those nations, why? Because of their unity, they gained victory. Even though there was no physical war fought, but what happened here was, if not because of them coming together, there was going to be a bloodshed of Nigerian. But because they came together, there was a power, there was a unity, there was a victory. So ECOWAS fought back because ECOWAS do not have the army. Now, what then happened? Equally so, there was another support when Algeria said, no, if ECOWAS try it, we want to fight alongside with those nations. So in unity, support came as well. Now, the second approach they took, right, was, okay, say we cannot go in, this is what we're going to do. We're going to sanction them. Now, and the sanction, it was not US, right? It was not EU that was sanctioning those nations, right? It was the neo-colonialists. It was the same ECOWAS and AU, right, that went ahead to sanction those nations. Why? Because of the pressure from the US and EU toward their slave, which they are the neo-colonialists. Now, the sanction did not work because those people, they are actually truly freedom fighter. They are actually truly liberator. They are revolutionary and never shake them. Now, what then happened? Nigeria went ahead and cut off their supply line of chlorine. No electricity. So they try every means necessary. Okay, so based on those perspective reasoning, that is what we say. perspective reasoning behind U.S. visa restriction in Africa. And we're going to dive into that deeper for you to get the understanding. All right? Perspective reasoning behind U.S. visa restriction in Africa. Now, I might be wrong. All right? I might be wrong. But again, that's why we said perspective reasoning. That is our perception, our perception, all right? Our perspective, because of what been happening. Everything is based on trend in our analysis, right? Now, let's go back to NATO. Now, the first thing we're going to look at again is, has NATO or Ukraine or the West taken the war to Africa against African people? Now, folks, last week, we talked about a video, right? And I'm going to show that video just for some of you that did not watch or that did not see that part, because I want you to get your attention. So I'm going to show that video, but I'm not going to show all right? I'm going to skip to certain part just for you to be able to catch what we are about to say here. All right? Now, let's get into it. Because we want to get further detail of what we spoke on last week, because we're going to keep following the story. And it has been confirmed. It has been confirmed. All right? Okay. Now, it has been confirmed what we spoke about last week. It has been confirmed. So then, let me show you what we spoke about last week.
Doesn't mean anything. Let's see.
Now let's do a little zoomy in here, and I want to point out some details to you that I find intriguing. Now, Tuareg rebels, right? These guys are ideological, untrained fighters. Notice that they carry their weapons all in actually kind of a uniform way, right? Across with the barrels pointed up, right? It's literally uniform. But make note about this guy. This is a dude who appears to be pretty pale-skinned for a Tuareg rebel, for a northern Algerian or a southern Algerian Malian. He also is carrying his weapon barrel pointed down with his finger very prominently off the trigger. This is something you would expect from a Western trained soldier or law enforcement officer, someone with with pretty extensive Western training. You may notice another detail. His face is blurred out.
His face is blurred out.
This man's face not blurred out. This guy's face is blurred out, sure. But so is this guy. Oh yeah, and so is this guy. Again, one of the only men wearing a polo shirt.
Polo shirt from a Tuareg. Interesting. Polo shirt?
Right? You notice khakis. Not a lot of khaki wearing. Almost every Tuareg rebel is wearing some camo pants. But this guy, khakis. This guy, face uncovered, sure. Khakis. Notice this man, khakis and kicks. Right? Notice this guy too. Also appears very pale for a Malian. And again, kicks and no camo to be seen. So I point this out. Oh yeah, here's one other dude also rocking a polo shirt. These tend to, I look at this and I see that there's just a little bit more people at work here. Maybe the Ukrainians, sure, certainly. Wouldn't shock me if you told me it was the French. Wouldn't shock me if you told me it was Americans.
Very interesting, as you can see. Is it the French? Yeah, I mean, you could see. The men said it's all. These men are very pale. And you can clearly see their military training is very different. All the Tuareg soldiers are carrying their weapons up. And this man, in a very prominent manner, has got his finger outside the trigger, just like the Western. I mean, I've done weapons, I understand. And he's wearing khaki and it's different. You can clearly see this. Okay, there's nothing.
All right. We showed up last week and we dived into it, right? And then I'm bringing it back so that I can get your attention as well. And to those who did not watch it, right? Now, the guy you saw talking about the video, not the black guy or the African guy, no, but the white individual, right? He's a retired United States Marine officer. Okay, he's a retired United States Marine officer. Now, and he know what he's talking about. And you saw that he gave description of how the West handle their weapon, right? Down and their hand always at the trigger. And their weapons are always pointed at the ground, not in the air and not on the side. Always pointed at the ground and their hand always facing towards the trigger and at any time in a ready move, right? Now, and he went into it explaining all kind of about how to call it tactics as it relates to the West, right? Now, and he made it clear that could be the French, that could be a United States Army, all right, or that could be Ukrainian Army, all right. Now, let's get into it a little bit deeper. Now, the issue here is they have already been identified, all right? But as it stands, we can't tell which nationality, whether they are U.S. soldiers or they are French soldier or they are Ukrainian soldier. But what we can say now is they are Westerners, they are white, right? Okay, and even based on their training and their position and the way of holding the arm, that's a retired United States Marine giving the analysis, right? Now, with this, it was never on any kind of about mainstream media, and you will never see it. And even if you see it, and they know it is the truth, they will never report it. They will never report it. And even if they report it, they will never be truthful to the Africans. They will never be truthful to Africa. They will never be truthful of their doing. You see, this is why they do not want, the West do not want Africa, okay, to gain independence, to be self-sufficient, okay, to have a level of technology at some extent, because why? You will expose them. You will see what they are doing. So that is why they will not give you any kind of level of education to be able to put you in a position or stand to see everything they do on the African continent. They will do everything not to put you in a power in order for you to be able to expose them before even things happen. Why do you think up to these times we're talking about, look, you know, it's so bad for me when I hear or when I see African talking about in the future. It's bad for me when I hear African talking about in the future. Look, when is that future? When is that future? People are living already beyond the future. But we Africans are still talking about in the future. When people are living beyond the future, people are already, using car with no one controlling it. You just sit in the car and the car move by itself. The car go to the stop sign, no one controlling it. The car go to a stop sign, it stop. Go to a red light, it stop. After the red light, the green light, it move. People are already living beyond the future. You sit in a car, you don't have to put your seatbelt, but the car will tell you, please put your seatbelt. The car is talking to a human being, because how did the car know that You don't have the seatbelt. But the car is telling you put the seatbelt. And if you don't have that seatbelt, that car will never drive itself. That car will continue to park until you put the seatbelt before the car moves. Then how can an African come and say in the future, things going to be like that when these people are living beyond the future? And you're talking about in the future. You now have a car that can move on land and move on the ocean. The same car. And at the same time, the same car fly. 3 into 1. You have a car that can move on land. It's drivable on land. Get to the sea, the ocean is drivable on river, on the ocean. It's also fly. The same product. The same product. And you are talking about in the future. And these products are being produced as a result of African resources. Are being produced as a result of African resources. Now, do you think those that are living in the future, beyond the future, on the glory of African resources, do you think they will empower you? Do you think they will show you that technology? Do you think they will bring it and give it to you? Because if they do it, that means the method in which they are using to get your product or the resources, they will not get it. They will have to pay billions of dollars for it, or in fact, they will not have to buy the finished product from you. So such people, their policies will never ever be a policies to benefit you, the African continent, you that possess the resources, you that own the resources. Never. So as an African, don't come and say in the future, when people are living beyond the future, there is no car in Africa that can drive itself. Only in the West. So these are the questions we should be asking, right? Now, let's get to the topic. Let's get to it. Now, you watch a video, you saw the video, right? Now, let's see here, and this is where we know, the West know about what went on in Mali, that those people were killed, those Malian soldiers, alongside with people who were fighting against the terrorists. But we have Western soldiers who fought alongside, who went and trained the terrorists, gave the terrorist tactics, and it went against the people who were fighting the terrorists. Then how can we say we should have Western military on the Africa? How can we say we should have American military, French military, German military? And this is what we've been saying. These are the people that are funding and supporting and training the terrorists. And that is why by having American military, African, French, German military bases on the African continent, you are helping to create the terrorists, to fund the terrorists, to train the terrorists, and to be more sophisticated than your army. And then when your army cannot defeat the terrorists, and then what happened? The citizens began to blame your army because your army are now well equipped and trained. But the terrorists are being equipped by these foreign military and trained by these foreign military. As we saw in our video. Right? Now, even with the evidence that we're going to show, let me show you how these people are responding to the issues. And the way in which they respond, right? You know they know about it, and you know they did it. Let me show you one response here. They're going to deny it, right? But we're going to see, bring out the evidence and see.
Now let's turn to another war, the Russian.
They're cutting diplomatic relations with Ukraine. They've accused Kyiv of supporting Tuareg fighters inside Mali. The announcement comes after dozens of Malian soldiers and mercenaries from Russia's Wagner group were killed by Tuareg fighters in the north last week. Mali's junta has used Wagner mercenaries to bolster its military since taking power in 2020. Well, a diverse range of players contributes to the instability in Mali. First, there's the Azawad National Liberation Movement. Now, it's a coalition of mostly Tuareg groups, and they're advocating for greater autonomy and independence for a region of northern Mali known as Azawad. The Tuaregs have a history of grievances with the military-led government, which took power 4 years ago. They've got a network of alliances and foreign support. Strained relations with former colonial power France led the junta to seek alternative backing, which includes mercenaries from...
All right, folks, you heard what he said, right? What the journalist said. These people, the terrorists, have foreign power support. Let me take it back. Let me take it back so you can hear it.
Region of northern Mali known as Azawad. The Tuaregs have a history of grievances with the military-led government, which took power 4 years ago. They've got a network of alliances and foreign support.
All right, you heard. They have a network of alliances through foreign support. They have a network of alliances through foreign support. And we know who those foreign supporters are. Western organizations, Western nations, the imperialist nations, the imperialist organizations, because their organization have to stay in those nations that have been destabilized in order to continue to exploit the resources. They have a network of alliances with those foreign organizations, with those foreign allies. You heard what he said. Let's continue here.
Strained relations with former colonial power France led the junta to seek alternatives.
Now, look right here. These are the rebels. Did you see here? Does this guy look like Malian? Does this guy look like Africans? Look right there. Does he look like African? Okay, let's continue.
Alternative backing, which includes mercenaries from Russia's Wagner group. Along with the pro-government fighters, a number of other armed groups operate in Mali. Some of them are aligned with ISIL and Al-Qaeda. Andrew Leibovich is a research fellow with the Klingendale Institute. He's a specialist on the Sahel and North Africa. He's joining us now from Washington.
So what you're about to see is to deny that there was not Ukrainian troop. In fact, it was not Western troop. What you're about to hear, right? It was not Western truth. And then after that, we're going to bring out the truth. So they are about to deny, he's about to deny it. But the journalist said, these Al-Qaeda, these terrorists have a network of foreign alliances, right? But just see right here, how he's about to deny it. And then before we bring out the evidence that it was Western troop that was in Africa fighting alongside with the terrorists.
Washington, D.C. Thank you very much indeed for being with us. Given the fact that Ukraine is in the middle of a very violent war with Russia at the moment, is it a surprise to find Ukrainian forces in Africa?
So the journalists know what he's talking about, right? The journalists know what he's talking about. Knowing very well that Russia and Ukraine in Africa, let's say, are fighting. Russia and Ukraine are fighting in Europe there, right? And then you see Wagner missionary in Africa helping to fight the terrorists. What will Ukrainian soldiers be doing in Africa? Fighting alongside the terrorists against Africans. Folks, let me say this first to the African leaders. And I'm going to be specific here just as I usually do it. Nana Akufo-Addo, Tinubu, Al-Assad, you guys are not doing any justice to the African continent. You guys are not doing any justice to the African continent. If an African nation can say we do not want any foreign military in this country, and you take those foreign military and host them, and you support those foreign policies against African policies, you guys are the problem and causing problem. You guys are the Morovia group of the 1963 Casablanca agreement they was trying to have in Liberia, Morovia. You guys are the Morovia group in this current time. You guys are the problem of the African independence. You guys are the problem. See the evidence or evidences, but yet they stay. You decide to work in the interest of your master. We are coming to Tinubu. The reason why Tinubu is Tinubu. Let's continue here.
Well, I think the first thing that we should be clear about is that there are still, this happened very recently, and there's still quite a bit of rumor, quite a bit of speculation about what's actually happening in terms of possible Ukrainian support to the Malian rebels. So we do need to be a bit careful about how we talk about it.
All right, we do need to be a bit careful. You see, when it comes to African issues, when it comes to African concern, when it comes to Africans funding, that's the time the war or the ears should be more careful of what they are hearing. That's the time the mouth should be more careful of what to say. When the West have been exposed, that's the time the world should be careful. When the West have been exposed, that's the time the world should be careful of what to say or what to hear. That's the time we should not be so quick to judge. That's the time we should not be so quick to speak. When the evidence are there, there's idiots sitting here denying things that actually happen. that the entire world saw, and they are talking about it. Let's continue here.
About this, though, certainly we have seen the war between Ukraine and Russia become more global, particularly with the confirmed presence of some Ukrainian intelligence and special forces in Sudan, for instance, fighting against Wagner and Wagner-supported forces there. So it's not entirely surprising, but we still have to really wait and try to find more information about what the extent of any possible ties are between Ukraine and rebel movements.
All right, I took that. All right, there's a reason why I took it. He said we should find more evidence before we can talk about it. Right now, we got more evidence. Let's see here. Let's speak on one first. All right, let's see a video here. All right, and then we will go to the main evidence. Now, but anyway, you saw that video. They already denied. It's not Ukrainian. It's not the West. So then who are they? Let's see here.
Russia-Ukraine conflict. The war was fought in a new theater last week, far from both Russian and Ukrainian territory. The latest Russia-Ukraine clash took place in Africa, in the West African nation of Mali. Now, this was not direct warfare. It was an indirect battle between Ukrainian intelligence and Russian mercenaries.
The latest Ukraine and Russia clash took place in Africa. Let's continue here.
Mercenaries from the infamous Wagner group. Some of you may remember Wagner. It was involved in some of the heaviest fighting in Ukraine until the group revolted in June 2023. Their former leader, Yevgeny Prigozhin, marched towards Moscow. His coup failed. He died 2 months later in a mysterious plane crash. And Wagner was put under the Russian Defense Forces. But Prigozhin had built up a large presence in Africa by then. So this division, the African arm, was renamed. It was called the Africa Corps, basically a rebranded Wagner group in Africa. It's now operational in Mali, where it works with Mali's ruling military junta. Now, apparently, they work together to combat terrorists and separatists. But last week, these Russians suffered a setback, thanks to Ukraine, in Mali. Let me explain how. Starting with the battle. It took place near Tinzaouaten. It's a small village near Mali's border with Algeria, and it's a militant stronghold. There are multiple...
Are you a first-time diamond buyer, feeling lost in the world of engagement rings? Stay tuned.
Insurgent groups in this region. You have the separatist Tuareg people who've been fighting for independence since 2012. Then you have terror groups like the JNIM, which is affiliated to the Al-Qaeda. There are also other outfits allied with the Islamic State and other terrorists. Basically, this entire region is quite dangerous. Now, Mali's junta and the Russian mercenaries have been fighting against all these groups, terrorists and separatists. And last week, they engaged with the Tuareg rebels. There were skirmishes early last week, but the real fighting began on Thursday, and initially it seemed to be going well for Mali and the Russians. They seem to have been pushing the rebels back until nature intervened. A sandstorm reportedly broke out, forcing the junta
until NATO intervened. Now, when the war between Ukraine and Russia, when it was going on, we heard the NATO nations, including the US and Europe there, almost half of Europe. What did they say? Ukraine is fighting for NATO. They did not say Ukraine is fighting for herself. Ukraine is fighting for NATO. Ukraine is fighting to preserve or to reserve NATO. Ukraine is fighting for the interest of NATO. That means NATO is using Ukraine as a battleground to fight Russia. That means NATO is using Ukraine, the nation, the state of Ukraine, as a scapegoat to fight Russia. Now, if Russia was using the Wagner Group to fight Ukraine, and the Wagner Group did a lot of damages to NATO, because I'm not going to say Ukraine, because NATO was fighting Russia in Ukraine. So if the Wagner Group did a lot of damages to NATO in Ukraine, right, to the extent NATO could not defeat Russia in Ukraine up to now, because it was not even the Russian army. It was not the Russian army. It was NATO. That's a Wagner Group, private military, just a private military that Russia was using to fight NATO, not the NATO army, not the Russian army or the Russian military, just a private military. But NATO could not defeat the private military of Wagner and Ukraine. And those guys did a lot of damages to NATO, because it also showed the weakness of NATO. That's why when you see some of the retired military of the US or of Europe, when you see them talking about NATO cannot fight Russia, these are the things. But you have to be attentive. They are not going to come and tell you, say, because it's not even here the NATO or the Russian military, it's just private military that NATO cannot fight. Don't really be specific in detail like that. But like Scott have said it numerous times. Scott is a retired military officer who is, how they call it, inspect weapons. U.S. military officer who inspect weapons, right? Now, those guys have said it time without numbers that even the U.S. cannot fight Russia. Those are United States veterans who are giving analysis, because they see that the entire NATO cannot even fight a private military. Those are not even Russian army that are fighting yet. So then what happened here? You heard a lady saying in a video, have NATO gone on the African continent to fight Africans, to retaliate against the Wagner Group? So it pays off NATO. Now, this Wagner Group have gone on the African continent and fighting the terrorists. So NATO have gone on the African continent to train the terrorists to fight alongside the terrorists, to fight the Wagner Group. And in doing that, what do you think going to happen? You are going against Africans. You are going against the military who are fighting the terrorists. They find that you even train the terrorists, the Al-Qaeda. That in itself, you are the terrorist. And that is why it is so dangerous. Because if these people, if NATO is doing it, and we know who are the NATO nation, then how can you keep these nations on the African continent to have bases? Now, let's go to the African leaders. If this is happening, right, how can you keep United States Army or bases in Africa, or US or Europe bases in Africa, Canadian bases in Africa, German bases in Africa, and all these people work together in their interest? Only the Africans leaders are not working together in their own interest. How can these people work together, but you are not working together? Rather, you are working with them. Let's continue here.
And the Russians back. This gave the rebels time to regroup and to get back up. Now, here's what Wagner says. The rebels increased their number to 1,000 people. The Malians and the Russians were heavily outnumbered and they were surrounded. And that is when the rebel onslaught began. Now, we don't know the final death toll. There are conflicting reports. Some reports say that 20 Russians were.
Now, if you see right here, these are the Russian, I mean, not the Russian, the Ukrainian or the foreign military. These are the people that fought alongside with the terrorists. You see here.
Were killed. Others say that 82 Russians were killed and 15 were captured. Now, if the second report is true, it would mark one of the worst defeats for the Wagner group, at least outside Ukraine. And ironically, Kiev may be the reason for this defeat because Ukraine's military intelligence agency says it played a part in this battle.
All right. Ukraine Military Intelligence Agency, right, said they play a major role in this. Then how can our journalist say we shouldn't talk about it? It's not true. We should get more information. When the Ukrainian military intelligence, and in fact, we want to read an article, all right, just to back up this video, all right? The research has been done already. But again, when the Ukrainian military intelligence claimed that they had a role in a deadly ambush that took place in Mali, when they said they worked along with the terrorists, folks, did you see here what is going on in Africa? When we have these people we call allies, these people we call Westerners, these people that say they love Africans, when these are the people who are training the terrorists, who are working with the terrorists against Africans, for the demise of Africans. And then we have some African puppets who are telling these people, oh yes, come, we will host your best. Come here, we will host your base so that the terrorists can come and be training here. But guess what? That's what Abraham Traore said. Those leaders who are hosting these foreign military, they are making mistakes because they did the same thing to host them. But what then happened? These foreign military were the one training the terrorists to fight the same Burkinabe, the same Malian, the same Nigerian. So when they told them we don't want them, and then you other African nations are the ones saying, oh, come, we will host you. And Abraham Traore said, those same people tomorrow, they will turn against you. When the terrorists start hating your nation, when the terrorists start, how they call it, killing your own people. Because at the end of the day, guess what's going to happen? Those terrorists in that region, there are people in that country or in your nation that will not agree to the way you rule, that will not agree to your government. What then will happen? The terrorists, they are looking for more members. Those people will go and join the terrorists. Africans, those people will go and join the terrorists. What then happened? They have the power now, they have support. Your own people now will turn against you again. And they will start killing your own people. Do you understand what is going on? So when Abraham Traore said, we did it and we made mistake and we are telling you, there's a reason we don't want these people and you are taking them and you think you are taking them to go against us. But you don't understand what will come at you. Because they will recruit your own people who will not be in favor of your government. And those people now will take arm against you. Let's continue here.
The agency spokesperson made an announcement on Monday. He said that the rebels were given necessary information and more. What is more?
Now, the Ukrainian Military Intelligence Agency said they gave military information, okay, intelligence information to the Al-Qaeda, to the terrorists, because they were working with them, on how to attack the Malian government, the Malian army. Because, again, we talk about technologies. These people have the technology. The NATO have the technology. The Ukrainians have the technology. So they use it. They kill Malian soldiers who were fighting the terrorists. The Westerners are terrorists in Africa. Ukrainians are terrorists in Africa. The West, they are terrorists in Africa.
Maybe drones. Ukraine-style unmanned drones. They were used in the attack against Wagner. So this information and more apparently helped them rout the Russians. It sounds like an outlandish claim that Ukraine would be working with separatist rebels in Mali. But then this photo has been doing the rounds. It was allegedly taken after the battle, and it shows the rebels holding up two flags, their own and Ukraine's. Now, if Ukraine did have a role to play here, it won't be a first because Kiev has done this before. They worked against Russia in overseas battles in Syria and the Sudan. But this is the first known Ukraine-Russia clash in Mali. And it also poses a unique dilemma. Ukraine claims that it is fighting with the Tuareg separatists, and it's working to eliminate Russian war criminals. At least one Wagner commander was killed. The fate of another is still in doubt. A Russian war blogger tied to the Wagner group is also reportedly dead. So Ukraine will be treating this as a victory, both for them and the Tuareg rebels, who, by the way, did not work alone. I mentioned that this area is home to multiple terror groups. Apparently, all of them supported the Tuaregs to defeat the Malian and the Russian force. And this should pose an ethical dilemma, at least for Ukraine's backers in the West. Because if all of these reports are true, Kiev is working with terrorists. Russia says that Ukraine even has boots on the ground in Mali, and it is training the separatists and terrorists there. Moscow might be exaggerating, but will the West at least investigate these claims? Or will it turn a blind eye to all the Ukrainian activity, no matter how destabilizing, as long as it keeps hurting Russia?
Now, you have seen that, right? Now, let's go to the article, right? And then we see the Ukrainian ambassador, agreed that the Ukrainian did help the rebel, did help the terrorist. Folks, our African leaders, some are the problem. Let's see this. Africa is already at war with NATO, with the West. Because, let's be frank, Ukraine did not act alone in this. Ukraine did not act alone in this. Matter of fact, let's see something here. Let's read some comment. From people here. Let's see this here, quick. Hopefully I see it there. All right. Someone said the U.S. is helping Ukraine fund terrorists, while saying Russia is a terrorist. The U.S. is helping Ukraine fund terrorists while saying Russia is a terrorist. Another person said, so Kiev is fighting those who rebel against its power in Ukraine. And at the same time, it is helping those who are fighting against legitimate government of Mali. And somebody said, who is funding Ukraine? We all know that. We all know that one, and we know that. We know who has spent billions of dollars in Ukraine. So this person said, who is funding Ukraine? We all know that one who is funding Israel, and we know who is funding Israel again. Someone said, I bet Ukrainians are fighting, are using French money to do this. Again, we see that. So there are a lot of comments here, right? Someone said it is not actually Ukraine, but all new, it is UK, it is US, UK, France using the comedian as site to proclaim that Ukraine is the one. Well, these are all comments coming in. Hold on, folks, are coming. So much to do. All right. Sorry, folks, I'm back. All right, so those are just comments, okay, from people who have, who have been following the recent trend or who are following what is going on. All right. So you see, just from people comments, and you already know what went on down there. Okay. So Ukraine is not acting alone in this, because we have heard France saying they will do anything necessary to regain back Mali, Niger, Burkina Faso, and nations that will want to, disengage with them. We have heard the West, even US here, saying that it is time for them to go and recolonize Africa. Last week, we talked about Mike Gazette, who said they should use the United States Army, their Air Force, to go to Niger, where he refers to African as third world nation, as thugs, as criminal. And he said they will be ready to use their army, their Air Force, to spray and to destroy, to kill Africans. These are things they are on tape. So Ukraine did not act alone. It may not have even been Ukraine, but they are just using Ukraine. So you understand what is going on. So African leaders do not care about Africans' life in Africa. Because Tinubu does not care about Africans' life in Africa. Nana Akufo-Addo does not care about Africans' life. Alassane, Cote d'Ivoire, those people do not care about Africans' life. Because the West is already at war with Africans. They don't care. Let's continue here. Let's continue to the article. Now, let's see this article here. It says, Mali cut diplomatic tie with Ukraine over Wagner attack controversial, right? Now, let's go down here and see. Mali has announced it is severing diplomatic tie with Ukraine, accusing a senior official of having admitted key role in a heavy defeat in July that killed dozens of missionaries from Russia, Wagner Group, as well as Malian soldiers. The Northern Tagi rebel says they killed at least 84 missionaries and 47 Malian soldiers. 3 days of fighting late last month in the north of the West African country, in what appeared to be Wagner's heaviest defeat since it stepped into the conflict 2 years ago. Now, on July 29, Algeria, Yusuf, the spokesperson for Ukraine military intelligence, the spokesperson for Ukrainian military intelligence agency, told that public broadcaster I don't know how to pronounce it, but Sopinin or something like that. Well, that's it. Told them that the Malian rebel, this is the Ukrainian military intelligence agency, the spokesperson. He told the news media of Mali that the Malian rebel has received. The Malian rebel has received. Did you see that? The Malian rebel, the terrorist, has received all the information they needed. All the information they needed. Who gave them the information? All the information they needed, which allowed them to carry out their operation against the Russian war criminal. Who gave the information to them? So the Ukrainian military, how they call it, spokesperson, said they have given unnecessary information to the rebels, unnecessary information to the terrorists, and they work alongside the terrorists. This is the West. This is NATO. Ukraine did not act alone. This is NATO doing in Africa. They don't care about Africans' life. Mali said it has learned what? It has learned with deep shock of the remark, and that Yusuf has admitted Ukraine involvement in a cowardly, treacherous, and barbaric attack by armed terrorist group that resulted in the death of members of the Malian defense and security forces. It said it will break off relation with immediate effect. A statement from government spokesperson or spokesman Colonel Adiola Maga said from Mali. Mali also cited comment by Ukrainian ambassador. Now, the military has spoken, all right? The spokesperson for the military, the Ukrainian military, how they call it, intelligence agency, right? He said they actually gave information to the terrorists about the Malian soldier and the Wagner group, where they will be, at what time, okay, and the precise time that they should open fire on these people. And then the ambassador also confirmed. Mali also cited comment by Ukrainian ambassador to Senegal, Yuri Pervuga, who was summoned by Senegal on Saturday over a video published on Facebook in which Pervuga provided unequivocal and unqualified support for the terrorist attack in Mali. He gave support, overwhelming support, for the terrorist attack in Mali. Now, Ukraine actions, this is the ambassador speaking. Ukraine's actions violated Malian sovereignty. So they confirm it. Ukraine was there. Ukraine gave intelligence information to the terrorists. Ukraine fought alongside with the terrorists. In a battlefield, Ukrainian army were there fighting the Malian army. So Ukrainian army killed the Malian army who were fighting the terrorists. So the ambassador said, Ukrainian actions violated Malian sovereignty and constituted unacceptable foreign interference and support for international terrorism, according to Menga. So, lot of evidence or evidences, because these are NATO officials, as I will put it, that have already agreed. The ambassador agreed, and the Ukrainian, how they call it, intelligence or agency or whatsoever, agreed to it. What kind of evidence do we need again to bring to people? Like that idiot of a journalist was saying it's not true. We should be careful. No evidence. We should get more information. Do they have information when they ready to speak rubbish about Africa? Had it been that it was an African army or even one African army in Russia, or let's say in Ukraine, that they caught, that the Ukrainian military caught, were they going to say, oh, we need more evidence, we need more this, we need more that, we can't talk about this, we can't talk about that? What kind of evidence do we need again? The ambassador said, he confirmed it. The Ukrainian spokesman, the military intelligence agency, confirmed it. What kind of evidence? In fact, he said they have given reliable information, sources to the rebel. That means they even gave weapons, ammunition to the rebels. What kind of information do we need again? NATO is at war with Africa already. NATO, the West, they are at war with Africa already on the African continent. They are these. I mean, Joe Biden is on tape telling Europe it is about time that we need to regroup than ever before to defeat Africa. Africa is already $1 billion plus. France is on tape. Asia is on tape. American lawmakers are on tape. They are military, they are private military that is sent overseas are on tape. So what much more can we say again? What kind of evidence or proof do we need to bring here to prove to people that NATO is already in Africa at war with Africans? To prove to people that these Westerners, they don't care about diplomatic relationship with Africa. They never care. They will never care. Today, tomorrow, forever. They won't care. How long are we going to say? How can someone be about diplomatic relationship? Then they are saying they should use their military. United States congressmen saying they should use their efforts to go to Africa to destroy Africans. And he's saying if they think they have the military, if they think they have the power, they dare try into facing us. We will kill them and kill their children. And American congressmen saying that. Then how can a representative of America leave from here to go to Africa to say we want to come build partnership with VP? And then in fact they will ignore everything that they have, all the threats that they have been saying against African, and they come and tell you we came to build relationship. Does it make sense? A lawmaker is setting that those who are making a law, those who approve war, the United States Congress, they approve war. The legislature, they approve war. So those who approve war, if they are saying those things, then how can someone come to you and tell you, say, we come and build relationship, we come and do this, then you sit and you agree to it? They are spies. They are just coming to spy and get information and then come and say, okay, United States Congressman, these are the information we have gathered. This is our weakness. This is their strength. That's all they're coming for to get. Because war is what they are planning. War is what in their heart. Sword is what in their hands when they are coming.
The second African country in a week to cut diplomatic ties with Ukraine amid an escalating row over Ukraine's support for Al-Qaeda-affiliated terrorists behind an attack last month that killed scores of Malian soldiers. Niger's government announced that it would follow its neighbor Mali by severing relations with Ukraine with immediate effect, accusing Kiev of supporting terrorist groups.
In the name of our highest authorities, I have the great honor of reading Communiqué number 068 from the transitional government, the contents of which follow. The transitional government of the Republic of Mali has learned with profound shock of the subversive statements by Mr. Andriy Yusov, spokesperson for the Ukrainian Military Intelligence Agency, in which he admitted Ukraine's involvement in a cowardly, treacherous, and barbaric attack by terrorist armed groups that resulted in the deaths of Malian defense and security forces in Tinzaouaten, as well as material damage. These statements were reinforced by Mr. Yuri Pivovarov, Ukraine's ambassador to Senegal, who openly and unequivocally expressed his country's support for international terrorism against Mali.
Burkina Faso
Worse still,
also reaffirmed
in
its
their comments,
unwavering support for the Malian armed forces, who fight against international terrorism and its accomplices in the Sahel and all of Africa. Senegal has already summoned the Ukrainian ambassador after a video, accompanied by comments supporting the terrorist attack in Mali, was published on the embassy's Facebook page. Many other African countries have condemned the terrorist attacks, and we are yet to see how they would react to Ukraine's involvement with terrorist activities on the continent. Mali broke ties with Ukraine over the weekend after reports in the Eastern European country that Andriy Yusov, spokesperson for Ukraine's military intelligence agency, blatantly admitted that Kyiv gave support to Al-Qaeda-affiliated terrorists who claimed responsibility for a deadly attack on the Mali-Algeria border. Niger government spokesperson Amadou Abdramani said in a televised statement that the country had severed relations with Ukraine with immediate effect, in total solidarity with the government and people of Mali. The breakdown of diplomatic relations is a symbolic defeat for Ukraine, which has sought to gain support in Africa as it battles Russia's military operation. Many African countries have been neutral in the war, or like Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso, have backed Russia's position. Ukraine had launched a charm offensive in the hopes of bringing more African countries to its side. An Al-Qaeda-affiliated terrorist Tuareg coalition claimed responsibility for an attack that killed 47 Malian soldiers near the remote town of Tinzaouaten. It was the most significant setback for the Malian forces, who are struggling to contain a decade-old insurgency fueled by ISIS and Al-Qaeda affiliates, as well as Tuareg affiliates. Al-Qaeda affiliate Jama'a Nusratul Islam wa al-Muslimin has also claimed responsibility for the attack. These Al-Qaeda affiliates collaborate to attack the Malian state and its supporters.
All right. So the AES nation, so to speak, Niger, Mali, Burkina Faso, are the only nations that are cutting tie with Ukraine. But the rest of the colonial puppet nations see the evidence, see the truth, but yet and stay, continue to sit to make business with the enemies. And with all this evidence, with all these things that are going on, yet and stay, we have these so-called puppet leaders in ECOWAS and AU are still going against the AES nations with all what is going on. Perspective reasonings behind U.S. visa restriction in Africa. Perspective reasonings behind U.S. visa restriction in Africa. We're going to get to it, folks. But all these play part. That is why you're seeing these so-called Africans, Negro nations, are not talking. Are not talking because they do not want to be restricted. Because the next thing here is, if they are restricting visa, what's going to happen? The next thing is, all their finances are in Europe, are in America, are in a Swiss bank, are in a Western world. Those corrupt money are right back here. So, if it can live on visa restriction, if the will of the U.S. or the colonizer are not being fulfilled on the African continent by these Negro puppet leader, what's going to happen? From visa restrictions, you know what's going to happen? Their account's going to be frozen. Pressure will be mounted on these people. And those are the things we've been speaking about, bad leader. And that is why today, Nigeria is protesting bad governance. Bad governance. Because if you have a strong economy means all government official money will be deposited and banked in Nigeria bank. Not Western banks, not American banks. But because you have a weak and corrupt economy, you will not put that money in there. You will take that money to European banks or American banks. By governance. So when you see the Nigerian protesting, when you see Kenyan protesting, when you see protests going on around the African continent, these are the things, these are the reasons. By governance. What do you expect when Africans are supporting Mali, Burkina Faso, Niger? What do you think when Africans are supporting military takeover and military leadership? Oh, you think it's because it's just for fun that Africans just want to do it? Because democracy in Africa, it means bad governance. And Africans have seen the results, positive results of those military governments, of those military leaders. And history has proven to us, majority of the military takeover in Africa have been fruitful than election. Majority of the military takeover in Africa have been fruitful than elections. Than so-called democracy. So how will you blame Nigerians when they are protesting against bad governance? Go and check those leader accounts. Their bank account in Nigeria, you will not find money in it. The only thing, look, all their money are in Europe and America. The only money you will see in Nigeria, in those corrupt government official account, bank account, are like money for their daily activities, like saving account. I mean, not a checking account. Because you have your checking and you have your saving. So their saving is in Europe and America. And their checking, that's Africa. Where they can take money from there and give it to their side chick, their girlfriends. That's what they have. African government officials only have checking account in Africa. They do not have saving account in Africa. And at the end of the day, when they are not doing what the West want them to do, the West pressurize them and freeze their account and take that money and nothing comes from other aid. So visa restriction in Africa It's just another means. Because if they do not do what the West want them to do to stop the AES nations from developing, because if those nations succeed, oh boy, if those nations succeed, the transformation that will take place in Africa, it won't be for fun. So they are going to pressurize those leaders. Any means necessary for the AES nation not to succeed. Because if those nations do not succeed, it will bring African right back and sit there and say, but look at Mali went coup d'etat, what did they do? They had joint power, what did they do? Where did they go? They did not succeed. Where are they now? Burkina Faso did it. Where is Burkina Faso? Because this is why you see African leaders, I mean, even African themselves be saying, well, Thomas Sankara tried to do it. What did he do? They killed him. Petro Lumumba tried to do it. They killed him. And these are the things that reign into African mind, and then we set. Because if those nations succeed, Africa is going to say, Burkina Faso succeed, we can do the same thing. So the aim of the West is to make sure to pressurize those Negro leaders on the African continent for the AES nation not to succeed. Because if the AES nation succeed and get better life for their people, right? The transformation that will take place on the African continent won't be easy. So their plan is to make sure those nations fail. And then at the end of the day, then the same Africans, common Africans, will not have the revolutionary mindset. Because in their mind, Thomas Sankara tried to do what he failed. That means we cannot do it. Even recent time, Burkina Faso tried to do what they failed. That means we cannot do it. We should be satisfied with where we are. We should be satisfied. We should be complacent with where we are. We shouldn't take further step. That's the kind of mental state or mental stability they want us to put in our head. And that is why you will hear our folks, all folks will be saying, oh, my son, look, you guys are wasting your time. Thomas Sankara tried to do it, he did not do it. Patrick Lumumba tried to do it, he did not do it. But they do not explain why it didn't happen. So Thomas Sankara just decided that no, I can't make it. Patrick Lumumba decided that no, I can't make it. Amilcar Cabral decided that no, I can't make it. Kwame Nkrumah just decided that, you know what? That's it, I can't make it. Because if it come out of those notions, you should explain why they didn't make it. And then now, in this current generation, why they didn't make it, and then what can we do that we can make it? And one typical example is just unity. That's it. Because we saw it when they were ready to form ECOWAS to go and waste Nigerian blood. What happened? Niger, Mali, Burkina Faso came together quick and formed an alliances and said, ECOWAS, we dare you try it. And then Algeria came. That's how they backed off. So unity is our solution. That's the bottom line. Because you see how divided we are. The West is using the nation like Ghana, Africa, Nigeria, and other nations to go against the nation who are fighting for liberation. So that's the division. So divided we are, we fall, we fail, and we will continue to be there. Because we were divided and we are divided. That is why leaders sat on the African continent and watched America or NATO went in against Gaddafi. And no one spoke about it. No one. Can ECOWAS come in America and harm any American government official? Or take down American leaders? Or their president? It will never happen. So why should we allow it to happen? And no African leaders, in fact, the United Nations Summit is going to be in September, right? None of them will talk about it. None of them will ask the United Nations to question the U.S. None of them will talk about it. But they will come here in September and come and get some speech how we need to build diplomatic relationship. How can we build diplomatic relationship when the U.S. does not want to see Africans liberated? When the U.S. does not want to see Africans doing things for themselves, but rather they need a control Africa. How can you have a diplomatic relationship with anyone when you have a control diplomatic relationship? Is that diplomat? What is in that? What is in that is diplomat? When it is being controlled. That is why coming to these United Nations summit is useless. It's meaningless. Who have ever questioned the United States of what she did in Libya? The United States confirmed that they funded the insurgency. They gave the insurgency the Arab Spring army ammunition, and they fought alongside the Arab Spring to kill Gaddafi, to destroy Libya. Which one of the African leaders have ever questioned the United States about? You told us you are going to give democracy to Libya. When Libya was in fact, Libya economy was the best economy in the entire Africa. In fact, the Libya economy was better than the American economy under Gaddafi. It was better than the European economy under Gaddafi. Have they questioned the U.S.? Where is the democracy? Where is that life that you promised the people? Where is the so-called human right? Have they? That's the disunity. They see all these things and then go against Africans. Even some of all are talking here. They don't like us already. They're already against us because we're pointing them out. Because we're educating them. And the truth of the matter is, the truth is always better. Anything that is better, it is the truth. Coffee, for instance. Like Malcolm X said, if you want to drink coffee, don't put milk. Because if you put milk, that's not coffee. It will have different tastes. The taste will not be like coffee. It will not be better. Because it is not coffee no more. It is weak. It is powerless. If you want to drink coffee, drink it like that. And that's just how it is. All nations, all continents, all the continents, all the 7, they are all uniting. Look at North America here. Do you see Canada going against America? They may have their differences, but never. Only Africa. Because we have leaders who have banks. They don't want it to be frozen. Bad governance. That is what's going on. And that is why we will not resist. If your colonial master keep putting pressure, that's how we're going to keep putting pressure. And then we're going to see whether you will agree to the people or you will agree to your slave master. Because even with the visa restrictions, it's not going to stop what is going on. And we want, in fact, this thing will continue until we want for the U.S. to take your bank account and freeze it. Let them take the money for the U.S. economy, for the European economy. That's what we want. We don't care how much money Tinubu get in Europe or in America. Let you take it. Do you think we care if the U.S. take your money? You think we're going to protest for that? Let me tell you something. We will be here to congratulate the United States government. We will be here to congratulate EU, the European Union. We will be here to congratulate them. And we will be here to tell them, thank you, and don't give it to. We will be here to tell them, put it into the banks of your children. We will be here to tell them, put it into scholarship for their children to go to free schools. We will be here to tell them. Trust me, I will be here to tell the United States government, congratulations, thank you. You think we will come here and come and say, oh, the U.S. froze African banks, froze African money? You will be in your dream. In your dream. We will be here to congratulate the United States government for a good, in fact, we will tell the U.S., you have made one of the great and greatest decision ever in your life. And we will tell them, look, every pennies of African money, African official government money in euro, every penny, take it. And we will tell them, do not send it. Because look, if the US send that money back to Africa, it's going to go lay right in the hands of another corrupt person. No, US, take it. Take it. The same way you took Gaddafi money, take it. The same way you took Gaddafi money, you froze his money and took it, right? It's the same way we want you to do it to those African leaders. Because guess what? With the visa restriction on African leaders, it's not going to stop the movement of the Sahel region. It's not going to turn Africans away from the truth. Africans are looking for liberation. Africans already know freedom does not come easy. Africans already know freedom does not come through begging. Africans already know freedom does not come through surrounding yourself. It will not happen. Freedom does not come through surrounding yourself to the enemies. So this is not going to stop it. So you better start putting the account on hold. You better start freezing the account. Because visa restriction is not going to do nothing. And the most part about it, sanction is not going to do nothing. What we want is go into their pocket. Go into their pocket. That's what we want. Go into their pocket. Then we will know you're fighting for us. Because maybe US, you don't understand what time it is. You don't understand what time it is. Because even you yourself, if you understand what time it is, I don't think you'll be working with African government. You will listen to the masses of the people. You will listen to the masses of the people to preserve your interest in Africa. It is what it is. And we are telling you. If you know what time it is, you will listen to the masses to at least have a better relationship with Africans, with the African continent. But if you think you go into the leader, while the leader will put a military on the street and think, what are those military benefiting? You think the military ain't got family? Huh? You think the military going to put their family life in jeopardy? You know what's going to happen? The military does not have money. Those military personnel, they do not have money to send their family overseas for protection. They do not have money like politicians. They are poor just like the common man on the street. They do not have the money or the luxury to just fly their family. So do you think they're going to fight alongside with you to put their family life in jeopardy? Do you know what will happen to their family's life? Their family in Africa too. They can be hunted. They can go against them. So the military is not going to fight. That I can tell you. That I will tell you. The military will not continue to fight. The military will end up because the military go home. Those military personnel go home. They see their kids. They see their children. They see their home. What better home do they have? What better life their children got? The military see resources. The military see how rich the African continent is. How rich their nations are. They see what go in and what come in. By the end of the day, no improvement in their life, in their children's life. At the end of the day, their children go to the same poor school. The poor man child is going. What better in there to protect? You think the military going to do that? Don't fall for it, US. There's a different time. If you want to have a better relationship with Africa, you better change your policy. You better change your attitude. You better start bribing African leaders. Because it's not going to work, go. It's not going to work. It won't work. Because even these African leaders, I can tell you, they are choked. They can't do nothing. Because if this African leader continue to react, it's just going to add up. It's going to add up. this time period, you cannot use African against African. To some extent, it might start, but Africans are not afraid. Now, they are not afraid. Because there's nothing to be afraid. Like Julia Marima said, we are already dead. Did you listen to a Nigerian lady recently in a protest? When they asked her, what did she say? She said, I'm already dead. What is in there? She said, even before I left my house, I told my mother and my father that I am leaving. You will not see me. Do you understand what time it is? You think she was afraid getting out? She have already told her parent, I may not come back. I am going for a cost. Let's continue here. Let's see a video from a lady here. I took that video because I love it. So let's see something here. Let's see what this folks said. That is to tell you, when people come and say, oh, the Jay-Z. No, they're not Jay-Z down here. It's not about the young generation. This DJ. No, look, no matter how you want to polish it, even the old folks, they are not living better life. So no matter you want to polish it that, oh, it's a Jay-Z, they don't understand what is going on, they don't know history, they know the history. They know the relationship between the US and Africa, between the West and Africa. And they know the relationship between other nations like China and Africa.
This is your first time. My name is Mamli.
This lady is not a youth. This lady is a mother. This lady is not a youth. She's not a Jay-Z. She's a mother here. A grandmother. But listen to what she's saying.
And you are welcome. I react on anything concerning Africa. But this news is very close to my heart. As always, anything concerning Africa is close to my heart. About what happened last week. Anyway, because of what happened in Mali recently, especially last week, as the Malians, the AES, are defeating the terrorists, Ukraine has now decided to get involved. We know that Ukraine has been selling weapons to the terrorists in the Sahel. It has been confirmed that they need weapons to fight their war there. America, Europe, and other countries are helping them. And when they help them, the ones they don't like, they send them to Africa. What is their interest in the Sahel? I ask this question even though I know that Ukraine is America. Ukraine is France, because recently even France has sent their troops to Ukraine to help fight Russia. What did Russia do to them? Because Russia is growing. Upon all the sanctions, Russia is growing. I said it before that the way things are going recently, we know Russia is in Africa, China is in Africa long time ago, but the political side of it, the way it is, the world is divided into two. And if you are against them, then they will do anything to come for you. And this is what they are doing. They are using the face of Ukraine. And Ukraine didn't hide it. To my surprise, they didn't hide. They come bold to say that, yes, the rebels were getting defeated. So they call all of them together, advise them to become one, to defeat this government that is in control, so they can get the resources, so they would accept, they will say, okay, we have defeated Russia. Why can't you go to Russia and fight in Russia? You are 2 steps away from Russia. Why do you have to come to Africa and fight Russia in Africa? If not that your masters send you there. And if this is the case, I don't think I'm allowed to say this, but at this particular time, I don't care. If this is the case, that Ukraine can go to different countries that America can hide behind Ukraine, France can hide behind Ukraine and be fighting innocent people in Mali, Niger, Burkina Faso, then whatever comes their way, they deserve it. Whatever comes their way, they deserve it. Yesterday or last week, they were crying. I don't want to say it too much. They were crying when it happened to them. Those children, those people there, they are also human beings. They are not animals. So if you are able to hide, to give intelligent information, to go and fight innocent people, they were fighting civilians. And before they get to the army, and they were saying that we deleted 80, we deleted this, and they were jubilating. And my goodness, if you look at the comment sections, the comment section is nasty. It's just like talking about immigration in Europe. Go to the comment. Don't just, when you see the title, don't just listen to it. Go to the comment section. It is nasty. Like, Russians, they are not human beings. All Putin is doing is to help Africa to stand on their feet, to stop begging. And you Europeans are going around, Americans are going around paying, bribing world president that they should stop immigration. And when somebody is helping you stop the immigration, creating jobs for them, let them have peaceful home to stay. You are sponsoring terrorists to delete them. This is beyond my understanding. We know they do it all the time, but it has crossed the line. To me, this has crossed the line. And I'm not going to drop any tears when I see them on the terrace crying, because now it is their turn to taste it. Let's listen to the news more and I'll be back. Thank you so much.
Ukraine claims that it is fighting with...
All right. I love our perspective, right? This is a granny. Now, I play this video because people think that what is going on in the African continent is the youth who don't understand, who don't know nothing. They just get up, they just get on the street, they just end up causing trouble, they just parading all around. But look at the analysis that this lady, this old folks, this granny gave. She said, Russia is not a threat. She said, US, Europe, you guys are talking about immigration. You guys are talking about nobody should come to your country. Okay, Russia is helping to go to those countries that you do not want in your, to go to those nations that you do not want their citizens in your nation. China and Russia are helping to give those people opportunity, create jobs for them so that they can stay there and be able to provide for their citizens. Then coming to your country because you do not want immigrant, you do not want them in your country, they are there. And she said, Russia is not the bad person here. Russia is not a bad guy here. I'm glad she's an old folks saying it. Then someone who will come and say, be like, oh, look at this boy. Look, who is he? Look, why he doesn't know. That's an old lady there. For her to say that, that means she has some level of understanding, research. She reasons. For her to say Russia is not a bad guy, because the fact is that who was on the side of the terrorists? The nations that were on the side of the terrorists are the bad guy. But I'm glad she came out to say it. And that's why I show it, to just let people know this is not a young folks thing like, oh, the new Jay-Z or the new Jay-Z, like the description they be giving. No. This is a different time period. The reality here is nobody really care about the US again, because they are proving themselves to people. They are proving themselves to people who they are. They are proving who they are. And every day, you know what? Social media was not active. That's how these people were succeeding. That's why they were succeeding, because social media was not really active. But now these everybody find information. We don't have to sit down to wait for liar BBC, liar like NBC, liar like or CNN. Those people, they are liars. Because those are the only means form of communication that people will get news. But now people don't care to listen to BBC, CNN, or whatsoever they are. Nobody care. In fact, the rightful information are being given on social media now. That's why you get the truth. Because, for example, BBC will not come and say, United States Congressman Mark Gazer threatening African and call African shit, or how they call it, terrorists, call African rebels, call African poor, call African terror, call African criminals. BBC will not come and say, he said that they are going to use the United States or how they call it, Air Force to go to Africa to slaughter Africans and African children. They will not say it. But social media platform like this will say it, will see it. So that's why these people were succeeding through the lies. That is why you have to understand what time it is. Because no matter how the US can come and talk about diplomatic relationship with Africa, Africa will not buy it. No matter how the US will come and say, we love Africans, or we want to bring this, we want to bring this, Africa will not buy it. They will not buy it. Because that have been your own method of lies. Africa will not buy it, and we will not take it. We will just see it as another tactics of another lies. Now, let's get to the U.S. quick visa. I know we already talked about it in stuff, but let's see something here quick. Let's just talk about it, and then because I want to go to Nigeria, Tinubu, to say something. But we already talked about this anyway. But I'll just read it, right, and give some emphasis. So this is the United States, how they call it, embassy in Liberia. Now, this is just Liberia, but this is also extended to other African nations. All right, this is also going to other African nations. So they say, the U.S. embassy in Monrovia is moving to a new visa services provider. Actually, that's what they will say, right? Look, they are not going to give the true motive here. They will not explain what they really want here. They will not put it here. All right? They won't do it. They won't do it. So, but we will explain. Those who want to take it, they don't take it. Those who don't want to take it, they want to believe what is written here. That's fine. It's up to you. But this is what it said. The U.S. embassy in Monrovia is moving to a new visa services provider. All non-immigrant, all non-immigrant and immigrant visa application services will be temporarily suspended on August 16, 2024 until the new website. Today is the what? Today is the 11th. All right, tomorrow the 12th. Okay, that next week. Until August 16, 2024, until the new website is online. All previously scheduled visa appointment for dates after August 16 will remain. That is, those who application have already been in, right? Those who are already sending for their people who have already put it in. Those who went and married their relative whatsoever, or let's say their loved one and things, right? And came and put in the paper. Those are the people that they will pay attention to because it's already in, right? Now it's like you already in the gate, you already in the house, so they can't put you outside. But if you are outside that you have never applied, hold on to you, right? Okay, let's continue here. Beginning August 16, the ustravel.com website and customer service will be unavailable to schedule visa appointment in Liberia. If you have planned to schedule a non-immigrant or immigrant visa appointment on or after August 16, we strongly encourage you to check here regularly for updates and additional information as they become available. Now, Niceness rating here, right? Now, again, this here is deep. You will not understand, right, what is going on. You will not understand what is going on if you read this. You will not understand what is going on if you are not been following the trend. All right, the pattern of U.S. policy. If you don't understand it, you will not know what is going on. You will believe what was just read or what they put in there. You will believe it. But the reality here is, with that alone, it's going to make the African government bad. What's going to happen here is citizens, right? Citizens going to pressurize their leaders because citizens will not travel. Because people who are in the West or in America here trying to send for their loved one or been planning to send for their loved one or their relative, they cannot. People who want to send like how they call it, if you are doing a program or maybe you getting married or something, right? And you want to send for your relative to come and be part of that wedding or something, it can happen. It's not going to work again. So what happened here is a tactic game. It's a fear tactics. It's going to put pressure. In fact, the citizens will be the one to put pressure on the leader of that nation or on the African leaders to do something. What then going to happen here is you have to go by the European policy, the American policy. That's what's going to happen here. So African leaders will not turn their back on US, on Europe. They will not make decisions that they wanted to do. Now, I'm not going to call names, but you already know. They will not take decision to go to other nations who are not US allies. This thing is deep. You see going on here. Because people are saying, oh, the United States want to come up with a new policy. They want to come up with a new website or new this or new that. Come on now, folks. Come on now. Just because they want to come up with a new policy that will make them to suspend visa or immigrant restriction. Just because they want to come up with a new website that will make them to suspend it. And people are saying, oh, it is because the US is having election, or that's why. What? Do you know how long the United States been having elections? They never took such action. All of a sudden, they come here, election, they're just going to take action now, or they suspend it, take that website, and then this, that, blah, blah. Are you serious? So it is African people who can travel to come vote in US elections. Who can manipulate US elections? And that's the narrative people are taking. But the reality here is, while the US is putting pressure on African leaders, the citizens will be putting pressure on African leaders to do something. And if this does not work, the next step is to go to their account. Their money, their bank account will be frozen. You saw it. What happened? Do you know the how they call it? The Human Rights Commission, right? The Human Rights Commission back off. The Human Rights Commission was about to charge Israel of genocide committed in Palestine and Gaza. What did the US say? The US told the Human Rights Commission, if you dare try, in fact, they warned, the US warned the Human Rights Commission, if you dare try it and put charges against Israel for genocide committed in Palestine and Gaza, the articles are there. I think I presented before. They are there. These things are there. The United States said, if the Human Rights Commission dare try it and charge Israel for crime committed against Palestine and Gaza for genocide, the United States said in fact, they threatened the Human Rights Commission and said, we will come after your finances. That's what they said. It's there, just like that. It's there. They said, we will sanction you. They said, we will sanction key official in the Human Rights Commission, and then we will force their account. It's there. Go and read it. Go look for it. What then happened? The Human Rights Commission back off. They back off. Because their money are in America, are in Europe. They are buying, they are saving. Now they are checking maybe in other country. Because when they travel, they got to eat and things, but they are saving. It's here. So the United States threatened them and said, your saving will be temporary, we will freeze it. And will sanction you, key government, or how they call it, key official in the Human Rights Commission. That's how they back up. That's how today, Israel is not yet charged with genocide. You got to understand the trend, the pattern of trend going on here. You got to understand what is happening. Or if not, you will not know if these people take action or decision. You will not know. But it's not because they come and get election. That's why they suspend these are they say this, that. I mean, understand what they said from August 16. It will no longer be there. Only those who are already there will what they call. You understand. Don't go. You have to read and digest critically. And the only way you do that, then maybe you've been following what's been happening. But that's what's going to happen. That is what's happening right now. That is what's happening. Because even the Burkina Faso citizens, Niger, in fact, they can't even come here. They can't even come to the US. They can't even apply for visa. In the first place, they can. Those nations in the Sahel region, they can. You got to understand what is going on. So what's going to happen here now is to put fear in citizens, in Africans, in the rest of the African citizens or nations, right? Who are on the side of Burkina Faso, Mali, Niger, who are on the side of the AES nation, who want for their nation to be part of the AES, who are against their leaders, who are thinking of going with that route, not to take that route. That is what's happening here. The people say, we will take every means necessary to see what they can do, to try to limit further alliances with the AES. You think that action, you think it's just so kind of like something. It's deeper than what you see on the internet. It's deeper than what you just read or what I just read. Now you will be afraid to support Mali, Burkina Faso. You will be afraid. Nation will be afraid to ally with them. Because first of all, this is going on already. And the West does not want those nations. All right? The West does not want those nations. And this is going on. So do you think other nations will want to join those people? Because in their mind, the US will do even more than this. And all this again go to bad governance in Africa. Because if you're doing the right thing in Africa, even if the US come and do visa restriction, who will want to come to the US? Who will want to go apply there to come to the US, to go to Europe? If you are actually doing the right thing in Africa, your citizens will not want to travel. No, they will not. Because why would they want to leave their job when they're making good money, earning for themselves? Why would they want to leave their family? Why would they want to leave their businesses? They might maybe come to travel to experience, but not to come and work. If you are doing it right thing where you got good health care, But most of you, when you're sick, you're traveling to the West. Unlike Libya, it was not happening. That's why the Libyan economy was one of the best economies in Africa there. Citizens don't have to travel. Any government official don't have to travel. They go right there to take treatment. Citizens and government officials went to the same place. But since the so-called American democracy in Libya, where is Libya today? So if you are doing the right thing in Africa, nobody will want to come here. On a basis in which they come to look for greener pasture or opportunity. Because you fail to create that greener pasture, you fail to create that opportunity. That's why all these things are happening to you. What is happening? It is because of your bad governance, your bad leaderships, your disunity on the African continent, your lack of vision, your lack of clarity to the understanding, to the struggle of the people you serve. You fail to identify the underlying factors of the African's problem. Henceforth, the U.S. have the right to do these things. After all, that's their country. It is their country. And they put visa restriction, they put immigration, wow, that's their country. They are right. I support them. I'm not lying. I support them. That is their country. They have to do things that will favor them, that will favor their country, that will favor their nation. Do you think they want to see their nation go down the drain? Do you think they want to see their empire? Do you think they want to see themselves to the bottom line? When these people understand what a third world country is, they don't want brag about third world country. They don't want brag the definition of a third world country. They don't want brag about poverty. They don't want brag the definition of poverty. What made poverty? They don't want. You think they want to see themselves in that position? They don't want to create a racism. They don't want to create inequality. You think they want to see themselves in that position? You think they were set to see it? They will do everything, every means necessary. You think they want to see themselves being called a third world country? When they see it coming, you think they will want it? No! They will do everything in their power. If it works, fine. If it doesn't work, fine. But at least their generation will not come and blame them like how we're blaming even our current leadership on the African continent. We are blaming them. Unlike them, even their current generation are not blaming them. So they will try. Even the next generation come, they will not blame them. They will see that our forefathers tried. They did well. But these Africans have to fight. Because it's 900 years. You had these people in captivity. You took advantage of them. You looted them. You manipulated them. Humanly, you looted them. Resources why you looted them. You oppressed them for all these years. You think they will not rise up? Their generation will still see that no, our forefathers, they did well anyway. It was just time for them to fail. But unlike us, no. Even our current leadership we can't praise them. We are even saying our leader failed us. The current leader failed us. Imagine that. We are saying Tinubu failed us. But let's continue here. Let's see one of the reasons why Tinubu failed. But again, folks, that's the reason why this visa restriction is going on. Is deeper than what you think or what somebody else may come and explain to you. That's the perspective reasoning here behind the visa restriction. It's going to boil down to frozen their accounts if things don't happen. Let's continue here. Let's see Tinubu. I have one video, I will not show it, but let's just see Nigeria, Tinubu, and then we call it for the day. So let's see the bad governance, all right, that is happening in Nigeria. And let's see the reason why the United States put Tinubu in power. Because imagine now, the Nigerian election was rigged. We saw U.S. diplomat official in there. Like one other lady, she's from Florida, Stacey Adams or Stacey Harley. She was there. Another puppet of a Negro leader.
West African nation of Nigeria. For those who have not been seeing, a wave of protest has swept Nigeria today, perhaps a wave of more protest over the coming days under the hashtag In bad governance and also revolution now. So a lot happening in Nigeria, and we are very, very honored to have here on the show to talk about this by David Hundane, who's a Nigerian investigative journalist and author. David, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
Well, it's great to have you here. And let me just start maybe with some framing. Perhaps people saw some photos of protests coming out, but what are sort of the proximate issues that have ignited this protest wave there in Nigeria?
So there are multiple issues. There's sort of multiple subgroups that have sort of coalesced into a bigger protest movement. But the basic underlying issue that seems to unify everyone is the understanding that Nigeria is going through an unprecedented crisis of bad economics, basically. To put it in context, as at 2014, 10 years ago, Nigeria was rated as Africa's largest economy with a GDP of about $510 billion. 10 years later, Nigeria's population has increased, but Nigeria's GDP now stands at about $280 billion. So Nigeria's GDP has effectively halved in 10 years, while its population has gone up. So Nigeria's per capita income has more than halved in the space of 10 years. Already, it wasn't a particularly wealthy country in per capita terms, but now it's at disastrous levels. To put it in further context, of Nigeria's estimated 210 million people, about 135 million are estimated to be living in multi-dimensional poverty, which is about 65% of the country's population. So to put that in context, there's no other African country which has a population of up to 135 million. So that 135 million of Nigerians who are living in multi-dimensional poverty, that in itself is a population segment that is bigger than any other African country. So there's a huge groundswell of public anger to tap from. This is then further complicated by the fact that the new government, which came into power last year, which, as you may or may not know, is very much a US-backed government, has made absolutely no attempt whatsoever, as far as it is possible to tell, to create any sort of dent in this sort of ongoing economic disaster going on. And in fact, it is very much the case that the presidency and the executive arm of government seems even more determined to act as if the good times are rolling. So one of the stories that has caused a lot of controversy this year has been the decision of the president to buy a new presidential jet. To put that in perspective, the Nigerian presidency already has the largest presidential jet fleet in Africa. Has a larger presidential jet fleet than many European countries. Bear in mind, this is a country with a per capita GDP, per capita income of roughly $1,500 a year, right? And at a time when there was a huge public finance crisis, an estimated roughly 80 to 87 cents of every dollar made by Nigeria is going on debt servicing, debt repayments, right? And at the time of austerity measures, because as you know, Nigeria has also had to approach the IMF and the World Bank multiple times, and the Nigerian naira, that's the currency, has roughly halved in the space of a year in terms of its value against the US dollar. So about a year ago, it was roughly about 800 naira to a dollar. Now it's about 1,500 naira to a dollar. And in the space of all of this, the president announces that his priority is to get a new Airbus private jet. The country then spends another 21 billion naira on a new residence for the vice president, who wasn't exactly homeless to begin with. So it then becomes clear to the people that it almost seems as if the government and the governed are living on two different planets, because on the ground, people are suffering in a very, very real, very, very visceral way, suffering to the extent that even food, like actual nutrition, has become a problem. And something like 65% of Nigerian household income now goes on food alone, right? So that should give you an idea of just how serious this problem is. Like, this is not a hypothetical numbers problem. This is a very real problem. People are literally holding banners saying we are hungry. That's not a huge expression of discontent. That's a literal statement of fact. People are functionally malnourished because of how bad the economy is right now. And yet you have this sort of great big cavernous government, which sort of sits at a great height and almost seems as if it lives on a different planet to the rest of the country. So these are just some of the issues.
Wow. I mean, it's really important to understand all that context, given the fact that this is a very close ally of the U.S., this government in Nigeria, and is often touted as the way that an African country should be. And I'm just curious, when we talk about what's happening in Nigeria, what has there been, I should ask it this way, has there been any perhaps influence or inspiration taken in what's been happening in the Sahel over the last year or so, with all these different movements pushing out, and new governments rising, pushing out the French and the Americans, and basically trying to impose their own sovereignty on their countries. And obviously Nigeria has been used by the U.S. to kind of push back against that. But has any of those changes across West Africa influenced people's views about what they're able to perhaps do in their own country of Nigeria?
Absolutely have. So specifically the coup which happened last year in Niger, which is Nigeria's immediate northern neighbor, has had a definite impact, because I think prior to that coup, most Nigerians sort of thought of Niger as this sort of 37th state of Nigeria, not a very significant country in the eyes of most Nigerians. Didn't really understand how it was even a strategically important country in geopolitical terms. And then the coup happened, and the flurry of international attention that came with it. And then more importantly, the fact that afterward, Nigeria has since become Africa's top performing economy in the space of, in a situation where it ordinarily is expected to be in chaos. It's doing 11% economic growth, which that's the sort of economic growth numbers Nigeria hasn't seen since maybe the 1970s during the oil boom, right? So that is then sort of creating a lot of questions and challenging a lot of assumptions, because some of the sort of successfully promoted assumptions in the Nigerian public space are that democracy, in the sense that it is promoted by the U.S. Embassy, basically, is a precondition for economic growth and prosperity. Well, here we have Nigeria, which on paper is a democracy, has all the paraphernalia of a democratic state, has all the institutions on paper, has the Freedom of Information Act, has all the bells and whistles, even though functionally, it's Nigeria is actually classified as a hybrid authoritarian state, not a democracy, but it's treated as a democracy, especially by its foreign allies like the US. And people are starting to realize that, hey, these assumptions may not actually be true, because here, look at Niger, who we've never really thought of as consequential in any way. We've never really thought these guys are going anywhere, and all of a sudden, they appear to definitely be going somewhere. You simply can't sniff at the fact that this is a country doing 11% annual economic growth. That those numbers are unfathomable to a Nigerian. So that definitely has raised some questions. And then, almost as importantly, the events in Kenya, which have happened or are still happening almost concurrently, have also had a very outsized impact, because in both the cases of Niger and Kenya, even though the manifestations have been different, but ultimately it would seem as if the target of the anger has actually been sort of two sides of the same coin. So in the case of Niger, it's been a sort of direct response to perceived colonial interests and activities in the Sahel region. In the case of Kenya, it's been a response to the perceived neo-colonial actions of the IMF. And the fact that the populations of these countries have been able to so successfully, so visually and so successfully oppose these things and have actually seen some results has created a significant amount of expectation in Nigerian public space that, okay, so if Niger, this sleepy next door neighbor of ours, has been able to do something, bear in mind that in the aftermath of what the things that happened in Niger, as you rightly said, Nigeria was used, or the attempt was made to use Nigeria as a sort of blunt force instrument to bludgeon them back into line. And that simply didn't work. Nigeria imposed some of the harshest sanctions possible for a country to impose on a much economically less powerful neighbor. Nigeria blockaded Niger's borders. Niger is a landlocked country. They didn't have access to the sea. They were effectively cut off from global trade. Nigeria shut off their electricity, which was in violation of international law. Technically, Nigeria committed war crimes, just to sort of bring them back into line. And at the end of the day, all this was to the net effect of absolutely nothing. The Nigerians are basically doing better than they were a year ago, as far as they're concerned, and are doing better than a significant part of the Nigerian population. And then the Kenyans were able to do their own sort of very visually successful resistance action. So these factors have sort of had a very outsized influence on the decision of Nigerians to come out and try to get something done.
I think this is a critically important point here, touching on the sort of geopolitics of it. And I want to, pick up on a point you made at the very beginning here of sort of this being a U.S.-backed government. And I know your own investigative reporting during the election was very much at the tip of the spear of some important factors. And when it seemed like, you correct me if you think I'm wrong here, the U.S. government was trying to help conceal certain information that could have had a significant impact on how Nigerians viewed the election and the vote. So talk, if you could, maybe about that specifically, but just in general, what the United States is hoping to get out of backing the current government of Mr. Tinubu.
So for those who may not be aware, the current president of Nigeria, who came to power last year in the sort of heavily disputed election, that's the president of Bola Ahmed Tinubu, used to be resident in the US and used to be a drug trafficker in the city of Chicago. He was active between the 1980s and the early 90s. And he was actually identified as a drug trafficker and as a money launderer, working on behalf of a heroin trafficking ring.
All right, folks, let me explain something. We're going to get back to the video. So you see the kind of people America work with on the African continent. You see the kind of leadership America produce on the African continent for African people. Someone that America will never allow to serve in of government. A person, a criminal of such that America by now will be in prison. America allows such a man to go on the African continent to become leader for the people and then call that nation a democracy while that leader is working for the U.S. interest in that country. Now, everything that Tinubu is doing, he's doing it serving his jail time because he should have been in jail in the U.S. He should have been in jail in the America. But no, when they saw that he had political ambitions, they said, okay, we can use this man. So in reality, Tinubu is actually serving his jail time in Nigeria for America as president in Nigeria, as president in Nigeria for America, not for the Nigerian. Now, that backfired a little bit. Now, again, I am not saying it is the U.S. that is supporting drugs trafficking in other nations. I'm not saying that. That's not what I'm saying. But let's see here. The U.S. is on tape saying they want to decrease the African population. The U.S. is on tape saying Africa is already a billion plus people and they cannot afford to see Africa in billions. They want to make sure to reduce that population. And their so-called scientists are working tirelessly to reduce that population through what? Birth control, HIV, sicknesses, you name it. Their scientists are working. towards that. Now, the West is known of supporting proxy war. Now, Bill Gates is on tape again saying, in the past, vaccines have been used or were used for depopulation. Imagine polio vaccine. Now, they might come to bring polio vaccine, right? But half of the population that they will get a vaccine to will not be polio vaccine. So Bill Gates is on tape saying, in the past, war, he said war in the past, war was used to depopulate a nation. Now, he did not say Africans, but if we want to take that into perspective, if we want to analyze that statement, it is Africa that proxy war have been on and on and on and on and on and on without no stop. No stop. Africa, proxy war. He said in the past, war have been used to decrease population. And then what did he say? He said, so now in the present, we can no longer use war because no one wants to fight war. No one wants to support war. You know, we Africans, we were so dumb and stupid. We use European weapons to kill ourselves, to destroy ourselves. Like Liberia is an example. Liberia is an example. And then at the end of the day, we come out to say it was civil war. We fought civil war when we're using Europeans' weapons. But let's continue here. Let me make my point I want to make. He says, so war can no longer be used because no one wants to fight war again. But vaccine will be used. He said vaccine will be used to decrease population. Bill Gates is on tape saying that. Now, if they do not use vaccine, what do you think they will use? These are people who are against. These are people who are against African being overpopulated or Africa reaching billion. These are people who are against it. You know why they are against it? It's because of the resources. Because they know the more we become, the more the demand become. And they are decreasing. And they will not have that population to fight Africans. And the more we get birth, right? The more we pregnant our women, the more women get birth and they don't die in childbirth or the children don't die, right? The population become. And the more the demand, like what you see happen on the African continent, the demand of needs. What you see? That's what they were afraid of. They did not want that to happen. What you see currently happening, that's why US, Europe, the West did not want to see happening. So they said, we got to kill these people. Whether through war, through vaccine, through sicknesses, through disease, we got to trade on them. Another thing I believe, in my perspective of not analyzing these things, the drugs pandemic in Africa are caused by these people. You see, even in America here, in a black neighborhood, in a black community, right? Drugs are planted there deliberately. Deliberately. These are evidence by the CIA, by the FBI, that they planted drugs. Even the police. The police, they say they plant drugs in black community to destroy them. So when you see the drug trafficking in Africa, don't be surprised. It is caused by these people. They are the ones carrying the drugs. Because they know on the African continent, if there is hardship, at the end of the day, what then happens? The youth, the population, the useful population will get into drugs habit. And that's why in all of Africa you go, young folks are dying from drugs. You think it is by coincidence? These people are the one trafficking the drugs. You made a drug trafficker a leader, a president. Folks, let's continue here. These are the things they're doing. And then when Africans speak out about the ills of U.S. in Africa, it didn't mean people hate the U.S. It's just the obvious behavior of the U.S. So the drug trafficking, the proliferation of drugs on the African continent, they know about it. Don't get it twisted. If they did it here, if they can do it here, they can do it in Africa. Because it's the same population. It's the same black people. It's the same black people there. If they do not want to see black rise up here, equally said they do not want to see black rise up in Africa. It's all about exploitation, folks.
In Chicago by the US government. There was a multi-agency investigation involved in this investigation. So the IRS, the DEA, the FBI, and to a lesser extent, later on, the State Department and the CIA also got involved, because shortly after his involvement became clear, it also became, he had also started to have some involvement in Nigerian politics. So from the point of view of the US, rather than simply make this sort of mid-level or mid to high-level drug trafficker, international drug trafficker, pay for his crimes, I guess it was more expedient for the US government to use him for the purpose of international influence peddling, because this is someone who was at the time becoming more active in the Nigerian political space. Bear in mind, the US actually has form for doing things like this. So you recall recently the former president of, I believe it was Honduras, was extradited to the US on charges of drug trafficking. The story that I think is perhaps less told is that during the time when he was active as a drug trafficker or as a president with ties to drug trafficking, he was very much a US ally, and the US was very much aware of what he was doing. It was not a secret to them. You know, they have some of the best intelligence networks on the earth. So there's nothing that was happening that was a secret to them, right? And it was expedient to use him as a pawn, as a tool at the time. And as soon as it was no longer useful, then we got these headlines. So Nigeria is currently pretty much where Honduras was maybe a decade ago, in that it's being ruled by someone who is, for lack of a better term, an American puppet, right? A stooge, because this is someone who has the perfect sort of blackmail material being held on him by the US government. So this wasn't entirely hidden at the time, because the results of the IRS, the IRS leg of the investigation actually had some documentation in the public domain, which I was able to get hold of, and with which I was able to establish to a very large degree of certainty that this person who was running for president at the time has been at the very least indicted for heroin trafficking in the US. But then it quickly became very clear that the US government was willing to do incredible things to keep this information hidden. So at the moment, I'm still in court with 6 different US government agencies. So the IRS, the DEA, the FBI, the CIA, the State Department, and the Executive Office of the US Attorneys. And there have been some incredible things that I have witnessed through the course of this FOIA lawsuit, where I've seen the US government telling lies in court to protect a foreign criminal. I didn't know such things were possible. It's been a real learning process. And as far as it's possible to tell, it's clear that the US government, even from the wording of some of the privacy exceptions which have been used to prevent the release of this information in the public domain, there have been privacy exceptions that have been linked to national security. Somehow it's in the national security of the US to protect a foreign drug trafficker. Why and how exactly that is the case, I guess the US government is the only one that can answer that question. So basically that's where Nigeria is right now. Nigeria is being ruled by a foreign criminal of Nigerian descent who has backing, or who had, at the very least, as recently as last year, had the backing of the U.S. government. And it seems as if, based on that relationship that he has with the American authorities, he has been able to consolidate himself in power. And as you may have seen today, the sort of uprising against his very, very blatant misrule by the Nigerian masses has been met with incredible amounts of state violence. Usually when a protest like this sprouts, it usually doesn't sort of go up in flames on the very first day. But today alone, which is the very first day of the protest, no fewer than 11 people have been killed across the country. It looks like it's only going to get worse. And so far, it seems as if, well, the interests of the US government do not really seem to coincide with those of the Nigerian people. So it would seem as if this fight, the Nigerian people are sort of, we're in it on our own, basically.
Well, we will certainly continue to fight.
All right, folks. That is it right there. So bad governance, all right, in Africa is the cause of the issues going on around the African continent. Look at Tinubu talking about buying billion-dollar private jet. Billion-dollar private jet. But you will never hear the United States talking about that's corruption, because he's serving their interests. But if a president in Africa was not serving the interests of the US, and that president is talking about buying $1 billion jet, you will see CNN reporting on it as corruption. You will see BBC reporting as corruption, and this dealer does not like his people. How can his people be in poverty? How can his people be no health care, no good school, blah, 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 blah. But the president is buying $1 billion private jet. They'll be saying all these things. Not because it is in our interest, but because that leader is not serving their interest. When you see a leader that is in their interest, they don't care to report on it. A nation is talking about buying $1 billion private, how they call it, jet. While the nation is dying. A country without people is not a nation. And that's what these Africans need to understand. You cannot have a nation if you don't have people. That is why when things are happening in this country, even in the US, and the United States citizens start leaving the country, before you lose strength, they pass a policy. Because they do not want their citizens to leave. They know that there is no nation without people. You cannot rule, you cannot become a leader and you don't have people to control. You don't have people to lead. You lead because you have people to listen to, who are listening to you, and you listen to them too. You cannot be a leader and you don't listen to people and you don't have people to listen to you. That is why when Obama was there, it was not Obama that passed it. It was the United States government that passed that law. They started giving 8,000 to people to stay, because people were selling their houses because they could not afford the mortgage or mortgages. So they gave them money. They gave them money to put it into their house or houses so that they can stay. Why you think they were giving $30,000 to entrepreneurs, to local businesses? Because these things will enable your citizens to stay, not to go to a different country. You want to maintain your population, you want to keep it. You want to keep your citizens, not for them to go to other places. Because you know when they go there, you know what they're going to do? They will fight for that country and they see better life. And that is why when Africans leave, they come to Europe and America, they see better life, they start representing that country. Look at the Olympics. When I saw the list of nations, the gold medals, oh God. And I look at an entire continent, Africa. What? Just Google the list of countries that won the highest gold medal of the 2024 France Olympic. Go see it. It will come up. I have checked all of these things. Go check it. A continent, an entire continent, we can win nothing better. But go see the US and you see the number of gold medals that they won, the number of awards. The US is not even a continent. United States is not a continent. But Africa, an entire continent, we can't even win nothing good. Why is that? Why is that? Because the opportunity are there. It is there. And it gives support to their people because you know what they do it for? On our stage. On our stage. It put America to the war. So when you hear, oh, American just won another gold medal. Oh, the Americans are about to play. For me, I don't see as nothing. The people are promoting themselves because that's what they did. They promoted to reach to that place. So you see different. Did you see the Chinese or not the Chinese? But there was a games. There was a game, some kind of gymnastic game. These were all Chinese from America here who were playing for America, all Chinese, and they beat the Chinese. Go ahead, check it out. These are Chinese in America here, right? But they were representing America. And they went for that final. They were playing their own brothers and sisters, Chinese. And they defeated the Chinese. That's why I laugh. Because they created an avenue for it. So when you come, they use you. They use you. And then, you know what the people do? They will say, yeah, America gave opportunity to the immigrant. And yes, and they did it. Why they can say it? They will say it. I don't blame them for that. Oh, America gave opportunity to the immigrant. Yes, they're supposed to say, yes, they did it. Yes. My point here is they create an opportunity. And people kind of take it, right? You go represent them. You make name for them on the world stage. You make name for them. But an entire continent, you can create opportunity. And then at the end of the day, the only good thing African leader will say, the youngest populated continent is Africa. Hey, Jimmy Papa, you think I want to hear? And you guys are the future leader. When will the future come? Your mother was in power. Your mother told us the future. Your father came in power. Your father told us the future. And then your father trained you and you came and you say again the future. Then you will train your child too will come and say the future. When will the future come? When will you guys create the opportunity for Africans to go out there to represent the African continent? So that people will be proud. We are a continent. Nations that are not even a continent, that don't even have the population as Africa. They go there carry all those kind of gold medal. But we go there, we struggle. In fact, people that leave from Africa to go there, I salute those people because it is their own resources. It is their parent that struggle to send them there. It is their relative that raise money for them. Even before they go there, I salute them. I salute them. I'm not going to talk else again and say, oh, how many Africans won gold medal? How many Africans? No. I salute them. Even if they did not win gold medal, they fight that. They were able to raise money on their own. Their family were able to go and raise money to struggle for them to go there. I salute them. But these leaders set on the African continent there with corruptness in them. They don't provide opportunity. They don't provide a good environment for the citizens. But they expect the citizens to do better. They expect the citizen to do better. When the citizen struggle on their own to go out there to represent the country, they expect the citizen to do something good to come back home. You stupid, you crazy. And these will be the same leader that will be appointing one of those Africans that go and represent the country and don't bring what they want to bring. Meanwhile, they in a country, they don't represent well. They in a country that have the opportunity, they don't represent well. But someone who struggle on their own, then when they go, you expect them to bring the glory. Did you provide an opportunity for them to go bring the glory? Nonsense. What is going on around Africa? It is not going to end. We will continue. And it is going on. We will not stop. It will continue until we see result. It is result we want. If not because of result, we wouldn't do it. The fact that we're doing it, it is result we want. And the result is not coming from America to say, oh, we come and listen to America. The result is not coming to say, oh, we're going to listen to any colonial puppet or colonial slave. No. The result is coming from the people themselves. I hope you understand what time it is. Folks, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for being in. Share the live. Subscribe as we continue to build. This is today's presentation that I have for you. As always, Frank, the host for the Revolutionary Repatriation Educational Lecture Series. One of the best places to come and have a Sunday worship service. We don't collect offering here anyway. We only ask you to subscribe. That's all. I don't think it's a big deal to subscribe. We don't ask you for offering. All we want from you is just subscribe. That's all we want from you. All right? Yeah. So continue to come for Sunday service and be enlightened. We are not asking you to put any amount and then to pray for you. And, you put $20, then we pray. $20 blessing, $50 blessing. If any of you still go to churches like that, you better start running away. Anyway. Yeah. Thank you for tuning in, folks. I'm so proud of you guys and for hanging in. I know we go beyond, but hey, when the materials are there to present, we want to present it. So thank you for tuning in. I will see you all Saturday, or I will also see you on Sunday. Peace.